it's a couple minutes past the top of the hour, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so today we're going to talk about when to use a report versus a query. We're also going to cover an overview of queries and best practices, how to use a query for correspondence, exporting your queries, and really how to lock that query. And if we have time at the end or that we haven't addressed during the middle of our presentation, we'll also have some time for Q&A. If you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A section. So just to do some housekeeping here, my name is Amy Strom, your Director of Client Success, and today you'll be hearing from Jill Byrne, our Innovation Manager, also known as the Jill of all trades, who will be leading today's training. We will be recording today's presentation, and you'll be able to find this and previous recordings during the presentation. Or in NPEX knowledge base. And if you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We have team members monitoring your questions, and we'll be able to make time at the end if we need to. Before I kick this over to Jill, we have a short poll we'd like your input on. See if we can kick that off. If you could answer these questions, are you using reports, queries, or both? And how often do you use queries? And the third question there is, do you use your own custom queries? We'll just give this a minute while people are responding. Great. Looks like it's pretty neck and neck with people using reports and queries. That's interesting. Or really use both, as most of the people that have responded. And it's pretty, we have about half of the people said rarely on how often do you use your queries, and just as many people said often. So that's interesting. And do you use your own custom queries? The majority of the respondents did click yes for that. That's interesting. Great. Thank you all for participating in that. With that, I would like to kick this. Well, let me share the results here so that we can quick look at those. And I'm going to kick this over to Jill to start forward.
Okay. So hi everybody. Let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. Query versus report, really great question. They are definitely very similar, but yet different. So generally, you're using query to create some lists. Maybe you want to identify specific records, so you want to hone in and use some criteria. Maybe you want to filter large amounts of your data and kind of rearrange what you're presented with in the results set. Maybe you want to export that data out to Excel and be able to leverage the capability within Excel to maybe make some pivot charts or slice and dice that data and present it in different ways. Of course, it can be ad hoc, so on demand. Nice thing about query is you can get in there and create a query on the fly pretty quickly and simply. They're also used throughout our system in the correspondence templates. So for those of you that are using FCG for correspondence, you know that you first have to start with a query and then associate that query with your communication template. So reports, what might be a reason that you would run a report? Generally, that's used in cases where you want to analyze the data. It's a formal presentation. As you well know with query, especially those of you that are saying that you're in it every day, query tends to be just a list. It isn't doing any calculations. It's not really a way to visualize trends. And so reports are more meant for that type of data analysis. Also with reports, if you have other leaders or maybe users or folks in the organization that do not have access, that's a great way to be able to share information with them. And then of course you have predefined set of options and the format there. So those are the big distinctions between report versus query that you can use when deciding which one is best for your business need. Our next slides, I'm going to cover some of the best practices. For the best practices, of course, it's a good idea to clean out queries no longer in use. The query functional area can start to become a jungle, especially when multiple staff have access and can create queries. It can tend to become a little overpopulated and difficult to manage. So definitely clear out queries no longer in use. Folders are another really great way to keep everything organized. I'm going to show this in a few moments of how you can leverage a folder structure and keep them a little more organized by, let's say, purpose or business unit. And then try to limit the number of records used or that is going to appear in the results by using criteria to narrow your search scope. So criteria is exactly that. I've often explained the use of criteria as narrowing the beam of light. So you have all these records in the database. Query and criteria is like defining or shining a specific spotlight on the exact records that you want. And so that's a great way to limit the number showing up in your result set. Be familiar with the data source. Maybe go visit a record prior to building the query. This will help you with identifying the appropriate focus area along with the data fields that you're going to want to pull in. So that's what I do. I just go visit a grant record or I visit a payment record and I take a look at the data, the names of the fields prior to jumping into query, so that I have a clear picture of exactly where within the record and what specific data I want to use and see within that result set. And then writing that query often and sending it out, maybe it should be a report. On that previous slide where we were talking about the difference between query and report, if you're noticing that list is often being requested, maybe it should turn into a report and be distributed in that manner. So some things to chew on. You heard us mention earlier, go ahead and go to the next slide, Amy, thank you, and how queries are used within correspondence. So the focus area, sometimes I call these source views. So where's the source of the information that you're wanting to either pull in to a template, pull into a query result? They have to match. So the focus areas and the correspondence template types have to match. I've got those circled up there. So the data, am I going to be sending correspondence to my constituents? Am I sending correspondence that needs to have grant data in it? So that's why that's so important. These determine where the correspondence template can be used and the list of fields within the template editor. That's what I've got circled over there on the far right side there, that query field list. How that populates is dictated by the query source view. So definitely be familiar with that so that you can build your templates the way that you need them and it pulls in the appropriate data. So what are those various focus areas and correspondence type? You're going to notice throughout the system that these match. So when you're choosing focus areas and you're choosing correspondence types, they match. And so those include the grant records, proposal records, scholarship, and then web application. I think that's a little known one. I know some users, when I share with them that, you can pull application data into queries and correspondence templates, sometimes that's a little known fact. So definitely leverage that if you're trying to create lists, query results that have application data in it. You can do that using a web application source view. And of course, constituents is one of the source views, and then designated grants. So those are all the various focus areas and correspondence types that you can leverage. Did you know that all data lists can be exported? Woohoo! This is such a time saver. So data lists, what are we talking about here? Record landing pages. So when I go to the grant functional area, when I pull up a constituent, when I pull up the constituents, those are the landing pages. I'm going to show these here in a few moments. Very often, this is very quick and easy way to get a list and then to be able to export it. I'm going to also highlight that feature. Each data list can be sorted, filtered, and then exported to a CSV file, which can be opened with Excel. So for those of you that might struggle in the query area, maybe some of the data lists are a better option. And I'll be showing you that here in just a moment. So on that note, let's see it in action. I'm going to steal the share from Amy here. And let's see, get it on my screen too. Hopefully some nodding heads. Are you seeing my screen? All right. So we're looking at FCG at the moment. And let's start off with talking about those data lists. So let's go right on into my constituents, for example. This down here is what I'm referring to as a data list. These are peppered all throughout FCG. Many of you are used to this. Things like going to the grants area. That's going to give you a landing page that shows all of the grant records. And the nice thing is, as I mentioned a moment ago, is this view that you're looking at here can be changed. That's this option here. You can rearrange the data that you're seeing. And you can filter. So if we're looking at specific grant types, maybe I want to see all the designated, pull those forward. This record count, hopefully you noticed that reduced. I think I had 500 and some. Now I'm down to 106. And then there he is, that little subtle upwards arrow. That's your way of being able to export on demand right there. I've got a CSV file. I can get that opened. My system's going to default to open CSVs with Excel. And now from here, I can leverage Excel to maybe do some rearranging of that data, maybe put it into some pivot charts or anything like that. So hopefully you're seeing how quick and easy that is. And again, all the data lists throughout the system have this capability to do that export. Rearrange these. With a recent release, we made the filtering sticky. Woohoo! Thank you for all of you that are using user voice. This is one of the recommendations that you've been at, or one of the features that you've been asking for. Once you present this data list the way that you want it, it's going to stay there, which is awesome, as you continue to work in the system. So if I crack one of these grants open and I need to go back to that presentation of the list, notice that I'm still here at that same 106 until I clear them out or I end my session here in FCG. So sticky filters, woohoo. All right, so the data list, again, that's a really quick way, but let's say, that's not quite what I need. I need to do a little more filtering. Maybe I need to add some other types of criteria. to the list to get it exactly the way that I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the query functional area and be able to slice and dice my data the way I need it to be. So let's take a moment here to kind of overview this area in the system. First of all, one of the recommendations that we give is creating a folder structure. The query area can get quite long, quite the jungle, as I've always said. And so how can this be better? Let's create some folders. You can create folders for maybe some specific staff members, maybe some teams, and you can create subfolders underneath the folders. So even more refining and creating a directory structure nice and clean. Placing the queries, once you create a folder, and it's super easy to do that, these little ellipses or little 3 dots here on the side cracks open this set of options. Maybe I need to add a folder, delete a folder, rename a folder. It is nested. So as you're continuing to build subfolders, you'll want to navigate to that subfolder if you want to create yet another subfolder and so forth. So hopefully that makes sense on how to create this structure. When you're ready to leverage that folder and start creating queries, new queries, make sure that you're clicking or selecting that directory and then start your query. The nice thing about that is it's going to automatically assign that query to that folder. So that's how you keep your new queries nested appropriately or inside of the folders that you want them to. Click on the name of that folder first and then create your new query. So what are some things that we can leverage within while we're creating a new query? You'll see I created one here. I want to let my board members know when I've got a grant. I've got some grants loaded on a docket and I want them to come on out to Portal and log in and take a look at those. So that's a correspondence. I want to send an email out to my board members. So first, as you heard us mention before, the first step in that is creating the query. So let's take a look at this one right here. Some choices that you get when you're creating new query are going to be, what's the name for that query? It's going to automatically record the who and the last time it was modified. And then is when you get to choose that source view or the focus area. One of the best practices or tips and tricks that Jill gives is take a look at the record first. So before I even jump into query, I might visit a grant record. I might visit a proposal record, or maybe go into a constituent record. And that familiarizes me with the fields, maybe the labels of the fields, the names of the fields, so that I know before I come here, I have a general sense of which focus area I'm going to want to utilize to create this. The next set of questions that you'll have in front of you is custom or shared. So let's clear the air on what the difference is between this. I know this can sometimes add a little bit of confusion. So I often say these are decision points, custom versus shared. Is this a query that others in my organization are going to need to run, but not edit? In that case, I would not check the shared box. So that's others need to run, but I don't want them to edit anything. I don't want them to change the criteria. I don't want them to change the sort order, but hey, they can go ahead and run it. If you do want to allow others in your organization to be able to edit and go in and change the filters and maybe the fields that appear in the results set, then you do check this box. Now let's talk about the other one, custom. Custom is related to SQL, and if you're familiar or comfortable with using SQL to query, the SQL language to query. And so that's kind of important. Do you want to enter direct SQL? So again, if you're comfortable with that, you can check the box and say, I'm going to go ahead and directly enter SQL right into this query. And we took that poll earlier, and it sounds like many of you are comfortable with that. And so, hey, go for it if you want to directly SQL into the database. If that's not an area that you're comfortable with, and so you want to use FCG's help and leverage the SQL that is provided, then you'll go ahead and leave that unchecked. If you choose to do both, which I know a lot of people just check both of them, and that's fine, not a problem. But you're asking, you're saying, I'm going to go into the SQL and I want to be able to edit that. But then I also want to allow others in my organization to come in and edit that. So hopefully that's cleared up the confusion around what these various options mean here. So again, I decided I want to send out a communication to my board members. So what fields do I want to pull in? Well, first of all, what is in the message? What do I want to tell them? So in the message, I'm going to give them a sense of which grants need their approval, the payment amounts. Many organizations have thresholds, such as if the payments are over X amount, then it has to go in front of the board for approval. And so I'm going to include that, of course, in the message. That then, of course, becomes my filtering. You do not have to use the same values under the fields and the filters. These can be completely different. What am I seeing over here on this left side? The left side, and if I crack these open, this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. These right here that you're seeing are the fields present within the grant record. So again, my tip of go visit a grant record before coming here. Sometimes I take screenshots. So then when I come into this query area and I'm starting to build the query, I've got a picture of the exact fields from within that grant record that I want to include in my query, whether it's going to be in the results set or I'm going to use them as criteria or filters. Now, in this case, we have a very distinct period of time that my board needs to review these grant payments. Looks like the beginning of the year. They can't be already paid, so that's our not equal. And then the payment amounts have to be greater or equal to $2,500. Again, that's the business rule at my organization. They can't be paid, and then they've got to be over $2,500. Now, how do you leverage this kind of stuff? Notice that you have some options up here. This is kind of your and your or. Do they need to match all the criteria? So this and this and this. Can they match any criteria? That's your or statements. This or this or this. In my case, since I've got 3 different criteria listed there. In my sense, I'm saying in my situation, my use case here, they have to match all the criteria. It's not an or situation. Now, when you're deciding to bring items over in to use as filters or criteria, these little ellipsis buttons over at the side, they all will tell you add. So if any of these that are sitting over here on the left side Explorer panel, you can leverage by just clicking those little ellipsis button, add it over here, and then use your conditional operators to define. If you brought it over by mistake, you can certainly remove it and it goes back over to the Explorer panel. Now, the condition here, let's look at these a little closer. You're going to see things like equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, all of those types of things, between, like. So here's a little tip and trick. Like is one that I frequently use when I'm wanting to include more than one. For example, let's say I wanted to pull a list of constituents with specific constituent codes. I would use that like, just in case they have more than one. So that's kind of the one-to-many option. And then nulls, of course, that means blanks. Is blank, is not blank. So now that I've got my criteria set, I can then define how do I want that data sorted. If I'm expecting a large result set, many records to show up, then sorting is definitely going to be in my favor. So that'll help me navigate through. In this case, I'm choosing to sort it by payment amount. Hit those results, and now I can see that there are 35 records that I want my board, 35 payments that I want my board to take a look at as they all are over. And since I sorted them by amount, it's confirming to me that I have all of them that are above or equal to my $2,500 limit. Now from here, notice there's my little upward arrow. If by chance I needed to get this out into a nice little list, I can do that and then just go ahead and open that up. And there I've got all of those exact same records inside of my Excel sheet. And so be able to have this nice list and understand what we've got for docket for them. Now, when I'm ready to send out that correspondence, I can send them that correspondence. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Let's take you into that template real quick. Here's my board member docket notice. When I went to create this, so I built the query first, There's that board member query. It corresponds with that template type. So this template type, there's that same set of values that we see over in query as our source view or focus area. It's also telling me where this query where this template can be used. Since this one's constituent focused, I need to be using it within in the constituent area. That also determines the various fields that I can use of which to build this message. So I'm going to send this out to my board, let them know that there's a docket ready for them. I've inserted the link to the portal, a little contact us link if they need it, and any other sort of graphics. So that is one example of how to leverage query to include in your correspondence activities and so forth. Let's pop in. I just want to show you guys real quick. On the constituent landing page, many times for our classic users, you guys have been used to being able to present all your constituent records. And a lot of times we get that question like, how do I see all my constituents in FCG? Just visit that constituent functional area, that constituent landing page. And there they are. There's all my constituents. I've got 524 of them. From here, of course, then I can filter. And if I want to, let's say I want a list of all of my advisors. Apply that filter. I'm down to 109. These are all of my advisors, my fund advisors. So there's a quick list. I can get that out if I need to. So yeah, I could have created a query for that. But again, sometimes these landing pages are a nice quick way to get that same sense, that same number, that same count without having to build a query. I'm going to stop for a moment there. Have we had any questions or anything that we want to discuss live here, Amy?
There was really just one question, and I see that Brandon was able to answer that for us, but they really wanted to know about what if you wanted to combine the end all or any filters. And Brandon was able to quick respond with, in that case, you'd make sure to use the custom query if you wanted to show all of those options. That's the only question we've had so far, Jill.
Okay. And that's I'm glad somebody asked that, because if you're comfortable, let's just add one. Let's see, we'll just use this one for LTS, showing options. I'm just going to call it that. And so if you are comfortable with diving into the SQL, you are more than welcome to do that type of thing, and so forth. And so let me pull this open here. Let's go in here to the filters area. If by chance you are comfortable with going straight into the oh, I thought I changed it. Did I? I thought I started off that one as custom. I think I accidentally clicked that off because I was talking and clicking. But if I had left that as custom, I apologize, everybody, then it would allow me to edit here. And so if you are comfortable with writing SQL statements, by all means, you can certainly go in directly and be able to do that. Hopefully you noticed the challenge with that, and I know that this is somewhere in our backlog. The only way that you can get in there to be able to directly write the SQL is by going to the results tab. So again, we're working on making that a little easier to get to, but for today, if you're wondering, well, how do I get there to the SQL? You have to build the query and then go to the results tab for this little pencil icon, this edit icon, to show up. Great question on that. Let's see. So one of the questions that we have been asked in the past is related to keeping that query functional area clean. What if you have staff? As you well know, the ones that you're creating, you kind of have a little more control over. And then if they've shared it, you can get in there and delete it. But if someone has created a query and they didn't check that box and then they leave the organization, there might be queries in here that you don't have the ability to take care of and clean out. One way that we recommend that you can do that is to reactivate the inactive user account and then log in as them, and then you can do the housekeeping. And so that's just one way of being able to get in and clean out queries for employees that are no longer with the organization. So log in as them, maybe change the password, log in as them, and then you'd be able to go in and delete queries that they created but didn't share. So this is kind of the end of the content that we had prepared today. I'm going to stop there for just a moment to see if there are any more questions, or if Brandon, our director of product, would like to bring anything up related to query.
Great. There was one good question about, are the queries static or dynamic? And I believe Brandon was able to quickly answer that one too, that all these queries are dynamic. So they are updating regularly.
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad somebody asked that. Because there could be times that you want a list and you do not want, you want it static, like I want to pull this up. I would say in that case, maybe export it out, because the dynamic, obviously, when I run this again, if I have a new board member, it might change my result set. So if it's a list that you want to preserve, I would export it out into Query, or excuse me, into Excel.
That is all the questions we have so far.
Okay.
I will go ahead and share. We'll finish this up. So thank you everyone for being here. Our September Let's Talk solution date will be September 20th, Wednesday, September 20th. And as always, if you have ideas for our Let's Talk Solutions webinar, please reach out to me and we'll get these added to our list so that we can prepare for them and have great content. If anyone has any other questions after this, please feel free to reach out. Our contact information is on the screen. We look forward to talking with you all. And thanks. We'll see you on September 20th on a Wednesday for our next Let's Talk Solutions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.